Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. In this episode, I interview Jim Rowe. Jim is a highly accomplished business owner, operator, team leader, and an expert in business, marketing strategies, and branding. Jim has been instrumental in helping business leaders to scale their companies by leveraging his extensive experience, expertise, and proven process. During his time at MME, Jim played a pivotal role. For smaller clients, he took on the role of an outsourced chief marketing officer and was part of a management team. In the case of large clients, he was a key member of their marketing team, contributing to the growth of 10 different companies. Jim is also author of 2 best-selling books. The first one is Get Your Ducks in a Row, Business Writing and Communication. And the second one is Get Your Ducks in a Row, Adapter, a Method of Problem Solving. This was very interesting discussion. Jim has a years of experience in scaling his own company than helping others to scale their companies. He talks about all the lessons learned and what marketing strategies worked before COVID and during the COVID, what changed. How to pivot your marketing strategy to align that with what changed during the COVID and what will work after COVID as well. So there's so much to learn from Jim. Hope you enjoyed this discussion as much I did. Don't forget to send me your feedback. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Jim Rowe. Jim, your expertise in communication and marketing, this is such a shortage of a skill set in a business world these days. So I'm looking forward to our discussion, looking forward to learning from you. So thank you so much for your time and welcome to podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Gurmeet.
Okay. You're welcome. So, for last few years, what we've been going through, there's so much disruption in a market. Businesses need to scale back again. They were shut down for a while. Where you see some of the biggest challenges business owners are up against, or the opportunity, if you want to put it that way. So what do you think the business owners are up against, or C-level executives?
I think part of it is the fact that so many people went from being in the office, like I had for most of my career, to no longer being in the office. And therefore, while frankly, Zoom for the employees, terrific. I sometimes wonder whether Zoom for the managers is as positive as it could be. So I think that's one of the issues, because I think what happens is, and particularly the young people that didn't really experience a lot of time in the office, I think they're getting hurt because you benefit from those little discussions, they always say around the water cooler and being able to talk to somebody. So everything is so formal through Zoom sometimes. I think that's probably hurting them. And I think I'm seeing examples of that as I go through what I do now.
Mm-hmm. How about in your world in marketing? Did they cause any disruptions, or does technology change? Is it that people had to figure out new ways of marketing, or what happened in your world in marketing?
Well, to a certain degree, yes. I actually have been using Zoom type things and conference calls, working remotely because I had clients that were around the country. I was often the outsourced CMO. So I've been dealing with that kind of thing for a long time. But in terms of marketing, when I think that what we're finding is some of the things that used to work. I was just talking, I'm a volunteer for this organization here in the United States called SCORE, and it's basically about it's retired executives helping out small businesses. And I give workshop presentations. And what I'm finding, I was just talking to a man the other day who's saying that I'm finding that the things I used to use, years ago and only a few years ago aren't working anymore. So the landscape from COVID has totally changed. I can't point to every single thing that's causing it, but certainly some things in marketing that used to work aren't working anymore. He used to try Facebook ads. Now they're not as effective anymore. I'm finding the same thing, even with Google.
Yeah. How about a messaging itself, or telling a story, the mechanism, of basics of a marketing, I guess, right? So did that have to adopt to the new reality that there's so much information out there, whether it's a health or whether it's globally, internationally, so much going. Do you have to tweak your messaging and you have to rebuild your strategy again? How are you going to communicate with your audience again?
Well, I think your brand message should be a foundational piece of what you talk about. So I think what I found often a lot is that the many clients don't have their brand position and their brand message and their overall mission statement as clear as it should be to begin with. So once you get that, it becomes, and you have that as solid, it really becomes more, okay, how do we take that and communicate it through the different things and dealing with through the different executional channels, be it, whether it's online or in other things. And clearly, I think the challenge now is that there are so many different types of marketing that you could do. In the old days, we used to talk about the marketing wheel, and there were like 6 or 8 different things that you could do. And now you just put, in one of those 6 or 8 things, you say digital. I think more and more people are experimenting with different types of mechanisms and platforms and things. For instance, and it's just so big right now. A lot of people think, well, let's just go on Facebook, and that's good for a certain segment, and they have by far the biggest platform, but it doesn't always work. And it doesn't even always work for certain segments. So I think the segmentation is a big factor too. The other thing, the beauty of digital, because I wish I grew up 20 years later, because I would love to have I started out in research. So I love numbers and testing things and see how things work. And I've always based a lot of my recommendations with clients saying to them, you don't know what your audience thinks is the best solution, and I don't know. So why don't we give them several solutions and let them tell us what the best way to go is? And that's what kind of I built my career on, is basing it on facts. The beauty of digital today is you have all those, you get all those facts, but you need to figure out which ones work. And I've gone through campaigns, even promoting my books, where I thought people would say to me, "Oh, it's great for Facebook is great." Nah, it's not that great. I did much better on LinkedIn, but as you can see, because it was a business book. But I think it's more of focusing your efforts and then looking at all these different, because you can spend, even though each one may not be that expensive to try, and you can get a good sense quickly whether it's working. There are so many different opportunities that you can spend a lot of money just testing things. So I think you have to, find it, be very disciplined about figuring out which is, take your core message and knowing who that target audience is and using this solution at this platform, let's say, and see if it works. And if it doesn't, with a couple of different options, bag it and go on to something else.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Jim, what you mentioned, that that the speed of where you can get a feedback from your client on a social media or in digital media is very fast now, right? Before, when you're sending somebody email or sending a survey, there was always a time in between. But now you almost get an instant feedback moment you put something out. But one of the items I find, I was reading a book that, whether if you're using a LinkedIn or using a Facebook or using a Twitter or whatever social media using, is that people have a different expectation on information, what they're looking from you, right? On LinkedIn, they probably want different information. On a Facebook, yes, they probably want a totally different information. It's like a totally different personalities when you go in the different channels.
Yes, and what I do is I use a lot of Twitter, which I've been on it since 2010, but I never posted really. I really did it to sort of keep up, and now I use it, and I find it a pretty good vehicle. But you need to keep trying them all. But the beauty of it is really you can spend a few $100s and say, you know what, it's not working, I'm out. Let's go try something else. Or you change your creative. It could be your message, but. And the speed is like this, and I'm so jealous of these young digital marketing folks that come in and they're able to do this kind of stuff so quickly. I wish I had that when I was younger.
Nice, very nice. So let's talk about your both
books. Thing, if I may,
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say, the other thing I didn't mention, I'm talking about all these digital platforms. One of the things that still works extremely well is email. Email marketing is, it started, they were the old-fashioned direct marketing mail pieces, but email marketing, a lot of people will tell you that is still one of the most effective ways. If you have a good database and you do a good job of not overly hitting them with email, I think that can be a very effective tool.
Yeah, and what we find is overlaying video on all the platforms. I think that adds more room for communication, right? Whether it's an email, you're going to drop a quick video in an email. If it's a Twitter, you can drop a quick video in it. So it takes a communication on a totally different level because now you can, it's it's not as best as an in-person communication, but at least it has some it put your face out there, and at least you can communicate a lot more message and a lot more contact to with your customers when you put a video in all those platforms.
I should have mentioned that because, in fact, I just gave a presentation for SCORE the other day, and I don't remember the exact number, but they pointed to that video is one of the things that has absolutely the highest amount of impact and that. So you need to be able to do it well, and you obviously know how to do it well. But there are. And you can make small ones and short ones, and they come in different sizes. So that's kind of the new frontier that, and frankly, as an example, the iPhone, these things right here are just amazing. I play in a band, and last week I took just the iPhone 13, and there was 128 people in the room. I stuck in the back of the room on a tripod and recorded us for an hour and 45 minutes. And by scrolling in on just the three guys in the band, the quality of the sound and the quality of the video is amazing. It used to be you'd have to hire a team to do that. I just plugged it in, forgot about it, and then went, I got to turn it off. So I think that makes all of us as marketers the ability to use this digital. You got to get a little bit used to it, but it can be terrific.
Mm-hmm. Where does that podcasting and what do you think on a personal branding plays a role in a business? Like, should every CEO or president should be building the personal brand for a company? Where does that play a role, Jim?
Well, that's interesting. I've been on, I don't know, maybe 24 podcasts, and people say to me, everybody's trying to sell me to make my own podcast. I've decided that's not going to be my focus. I have my focus to try and get my books out there. But I think it can be very impactful. I think what you're doing makes all the sense in the world based upon our conversation the other day. You're interviewing people and then sending it out to potential clients and both clients and prospects in your region in Canada. I think that's the way to do it, and I think it's a good idea. But and I probably would do it if I was still really focused on doing my agency, which is still operational, but I'm not working with clients since COVID, and Jim Rowe Marketing. But I think it can be a very impactful thing because people get to know you and they go, I'd like to work with that person. It's a lot better than just seeing a picture and some quotes.
Yeah, and you can add a value to a lot of people, right? Whether they like it or not, they're a subscriber or not. But audience who are watching, who we send it to, they draw a lot of value, and especially for the guests as well. You can connect these two and deliver a lot of value in many different forms.
Right. I think the other thing that can be done is take those videos and put them in if you have a good network in either LinkedIn or to me I would do it on Twitter. I think that's a way to do 30 to 60 seconds. Make a point, somebody will watch it and move on.
Yeah, the short video, the short format, right?
And even the long form.
Yeah. So very interesting. So let's talk about your book, Jim. I went through both of your books, very interesting books. I like that duck analogy that you use in both of the books. So the first one was get your ducks in a row for a business. That was more for communication, I guess, right?
Right. Well, the way it started, first of all, let me start by saying I was trained very well early on in my career by a woman that was my first brand marketing boss. And the first day she sat down and said to me, you need the two most important things you need to do. I was 24 to be successful here or anywhere is to think critically and to communicate both in writing and presentations. And she gave me a one-page 10-step briefing document that I have been using for 48 years. And it's an amazing little thing. And over the years, as I started going on, I was down at Coca-Cola. I was brand manager at Coke. And I was realizing I'm training these people and using the same document that she gave me years ago. And when we had the agency, which we founded in 1990, I did the same thing. I was training young people out of school. And around the 2000s, I started noticing the young folks out of school were less good at thinking and less good at writing. And so I started thinking about, if I were to ever do something. The other thing that happened is I read this book called Who Moved My Cheese. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I think we talked about it at one point. Who Moved My Cheese? And it's a fable about two mice and two men in a maze and
Okay.
around the world. And it's translated into 37 different languages. And it's a
Okay.
fable that basically the premise is things change. You need to learn to adapt. So he told a story about mice and men in a maze. And I remember thinking if I were to ever write a book, I thought it was great. And you get through it in an hour. I would do something like that. And so when I retired, that's really when I started, and COVID hit. I had it in my head for a lot of years. I wrote, because I didn't have any clients at that point, I wrote Get Your Ducks in a Row after my last name. And it is a story about ducks in business and telling a story of how a young duck learned how to do the 10-step process that I learned
Okay.
from Connie and saved the company. And I must say at this point that Connie, her name, my first boss in marketing, I'm still friendly with her today. Her name is Connie Humphrey, but in the book, she's Connie Duckfree. And so I just use that playful thing. And some people love it, and other people go, it's kind of childish or juvenile. And that's okay. You can't, not everybody thinks the Beatles were a great band. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you got to accept that not everybody's going to love it. But so, and then I finished that book when it was you can read it in an hour. You learn the 10 steps and how to put it on one page. And I finished and I thought, I've been working for 45 years. There are so many other things I wanted to communicate that would help you fill in those 10 steps that I started to write an appendix. And Gurmeet, it was boring. And I thought, I'm going to go
Yeah.
back to it. Instead of writing an appendix, I created an acronym because I really wanted to teach the holistic cycle from analysis through execution. So I created an acronym called the adapter method, and you should learn how to do it. And it's still under the title "Get Your Ducks in a Row," Book 2, and it stands for Analyze, Deduce, Author, Perform, Tackle, Evaluate, and Refine. And it represents the cycle of business. So I wrote that book as a follow-up where Connie is still, and she went back to her alma mater, Columbia Duck University, which is where she had gotten her dual MBA in marketing and finance. So the two of them together, and what's really exciting is really just a couple of, about a month ago, the books were accepted as textbooks at a college in Texas called
Nice.
Angelo State. And the two communication and PR people there, a friend of mine was a PhD down there as well, they chose to use them as the textbooks. And I said to the head of the department, I'm thrilled, but what was the reason? And she said, well, because it's an entertaining way to learn something, and
Yeah.
it only takes an hour. Secondly, it gives them a tangible thing to walk away with. And when you think about it, so many textbooks, you walk away and you've had 300 pages, you've taken a semester to learn it. You walk away from this one book and you have a one-page 10-step form that helps you fill out how to think clearly and communicate well and get it down to one page. They loved it. And then the third thing she said to me is, I think they should use and hold on to both books as reference guides for the rest of their lives. So it's kind of a cool combination there. And I did a survey with the students. I asked the teachers, I presented to two classes, 2 nights from 7 to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Back to back. And they loved it, Zoom call down from New York to Texas. And I did a survey with them because that's where I started market research. And the results were really very positive. They loved them because it was easy read. It wasn't boring. And it's a story. So it holds your attention and you provide facts. So that's what I focus on today.
Very interesting, and your name used in a book as well, that with the ducks in a row, very, very interesting, creative way of keeping people engaged, I guess, right? That's what I find that.
Well, thank you. I spent 45 years in brand management and branding. That's my focus. So I didn't really start there. What's interesting is I didn't start there. One day I went, I started looking for the URL and everybody had one, a version of an ROW. I thought, I
Yeah.
got a way to get the .com. But yeah, and that's what everybody says. And it's, you know what? It's a simple way. Frankly, that's what, a lot of your executives that listen to your podcast may be struggling with. I don't think they realize how poor a lot of, we need to stop thinking that just because they have a college degree, maybe even great grades, and maybe even from a great school, that they know how to think critically and communicate well so that it's clear, concise, and compelling. We need to stop assuming that. And because everybody thinks and communicates, the young people have no idea. I'll give you two pieces of information. Three.
Yeah.
One is a study by Society of Human Resource Managers, SHRM it's called. They did a study and they said, what are the top 2 skills that managers look for when hiring? What do you think they are?
Critical thinking and communication, probably in general.
And communication.
Yeah.
Right. 75%. Both of those, top of all these other skills, 75% critical thinking and communication. Then in my research, I found 3 different surveys. One was Inside Higher Ed, the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and the third was PayScale, which had over 60,000 people in the sample. And they, all 3 of them, between 45 and 75% between the 3 studies, indicated that the recent grads they've hired have poor critical thinking and communication skills. Yeah. And when you think about that, isn't that sad that they've gone through all this time and money and they've gotten this degree and they can't do the top 2 most important things? But then I found out, I dug a little deeper, and in 2 of those studies, those recent grads who work for those same companies, 2/3 to 80% of them rated themselves proficient. They have no idea that they're not good at it. So you've got this huge skills gap, and it's really, the impact is pretty severe. Just Inc. magazine alone had 3 separate articles. The first one being $400 billion a year is being lost due to poor writing skills. The second article, $37 billion being lost due to mistakes from poor communication. And the third article, $3 billion a year is being spent on remedial writing training. And that's not just community college students. These are some of the Ivy League students are having to be trained on these 2 skills.
Yeah, crazy. Very interesting. Very interesting. I hire a lot of young people in my business, Jim, and I couldn't, agree with you more. The shortage of this skill set. So what do you think driving a shortage in skill set? Is that universities dropping a ball, or colleges or high schools dropping a ball? Where do you think this shortage is coming from? Because that is so obvious that this is a skill set. When I interview people, this is what I'm looking for, right? Can you think on a spot? Can you solve a problem? Can you communicate well with the customers? But it's very hard to, we end up taking we take people on that they're a little bit short on these things, and we start to train them. It takes some long time to, go through training and start building the skill set. So I'm trying to understand, where do you think the shortage coming from?
Well, I think it's a couple of things, but you hit it on the head. The bigger part is education, but everybody I talk to, one of the first things they say to me is, well, do you think it's because we're using all these devices and social media? And so let's start there. And I would say for the last 10 or 15 years, I think that's part of the problem. I don't think it's the biggest part. And why is that? Because the people that have been working for the last 10, 15 years, and they're dealing and now writing on these things, they're writing more than at any other time in the history of man because of these devices. However, the kind of writing they're doing is very casual. It's interactive. It's not structured thinking. It's just back and forth. And they do it so often, they have now assumed that that's the way to write. They all think they can write. And yet when they take it to the more sophisticated, where you need to be a little bit more disciplined about how you approach things, they don't change the way they're doing. So I think that's part of it. Now, the second, but the bigger part to me is education. So let's break that down into critical thinking and communication. When it starts with critical thinking, I don't know about Canada, but do you remember those great courses that you took in critical thinking in school? Did you take them?
In a computer science
course in critical thinking,
we not in a school, but in a university, we have a probability curriculum. Every semester you have to take a probability that has a part of critical thinking, because you're dealing with the probability math, I guess, right?
Yeah, but for the most part, we don't teach critical thinking here. There aren't courses on it. And the theory is that you learn critical thinking within the context of the courses that you take. Now, as I often say, I'm not an educator, so I can't tell you whether that's a good strategy. But as a marketer looking at the results, I can tell you, well, it's not working. There's a big problem there. So that's part of it. And the reason is we teach, for the most part, we teach memorization. And as Albert Einstein said, the purpose of education is not the learning of facts, it's the training of the mind to think. And so I don't think we do that enough here in the States anyway. So that's part A. The second part is when you get into communication, Warren Buffett indicated that you need to be able to communicate in life, and perhaps the schools underemphasize that. And I think that's Warren being very polite because that's the way he is. But and to a certain degree, it's not all the university's faults, because what happened over the last 20 years, the STEM courses came in, and all the corporations came to the universities and said, we need to have those STEM courses. But the problem is there's only a finite number of courses, 40 courses in 4 years. And so something had to give. So when you put something in, something has to come out. They took out the STEM courses. They took out the arts. And so they're now noticing the problem. And in 2021, there was a book called The Great Skills Gap. And one of the first chapters indicated that we need to bring back the arts and call them STEAM courses. Put the A back in there and call them STEAM courses. So that's one part. The other thing is, and I'm sort of there's all this focus on reading, and I think that's important. I don't disagree that reading is important. But reading is passive. Somebody else has already done the hard work. And so I don't think we spend enough time focusing on writing, because writing is really where the action takes place. And you have to be thinking if you're writing. So I use the phrase, to write is to think. And so I started looking into, how do we teach what's going on with writing? And the first thing I found was this organization that I actually give $1 per book sold to, called the National Writing Project.org, NWP.org. And it's a 50-year-old organization of teachers teaching teachers to teach writing. Why is that? Well, because they admit they don't really get trained in their education degree how well to teach writing. Very few of them like teaching writing. Very few had, I think it was only like a third, had one full course dedicated in their 4 years of educational degree to teaching writing. So they're not getting taught. There was a book called Academically Adrift that came out and said that only about less than half of students had 5 courses or more with 20 pages of writing. So that's only 12% of all the courses they took. So they're not getting any training. So there's no practice, no training. It's no wonder. Their tests are multiple choice. You're not getting practice there. Most professors, the really good ones, have the wherewithal to say, okay, I'm going to give out an assignment and it's going to kill my weekend because I got to grade papers. But that's a big part of it. So if writing is so important, and I'll get to the point here, I started looking into, what are we teaching when we're teaching writing? And in early grade school, you learn a narrative and descriptive and expository, and that's good for grade school. You learn how to sentences and vocabulary and all that. When you get into high school and then college, you learn persuasive or argumentative writing, and that's good and it's important, but it's not real world. That's the problem. You have an English teacher providing option A, option B, give me 3 to 5 paragraphs on what you think is the best way to go. And you shouldn't take persuasive writing away. But that's where it stops. And what we don't teach is what happens in the real world, what I refer to as strategic writing. Strategic writing is you have to go out and analyze the problem and uncover what the problems are, then establish some objectives, and then create innovative solutions, all with the purpose of achieving a goal. We don't teach strategic writing. In fact, I almost called book 1 instead of business writing. I was going to call it strategic writing. And the Amazon consultant I was using said, well, you wouldn't be in the business book section, so don't do that. But I'm probably going to go back and do a thing. But really, when you think about it, and the beauty of strategic writing, it's really the integration of critical thinking and communication. And that's what my books are about. If you can go through those 10 steps, and learn it. It teaches you how to think and to understand the problem and do each of those things so that you achieve a goal. We don't teach that unless, some business schools and business courses teach it. But think about it. I think it's in the United States, only like 19 or 20% of the people working in business have a business degree.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Very interesting. Where does the listening skill sit in this, the whole scenario, Jim? I've seen people hear you, but they hard time listening. And if there is a listening, then hard time understanding and absorbing that and I find a great shortage in that in my business and that. So where does the listening skill, and what do you think of that? How far we are in those skills building?
I think it's a disaster. I think it's an absolute disaster. I have to tell you that I retired in 2016 from the agency I worked at and founded for 27 years. And I remember thinking over the last 3 or 4 years, so that's, let's say 2010 to 2016, I can't tell you the amount of times I would have to tell the young people in my team, I couldn't tell the clients this, but I would tell the young people of my team, let me finish. Yeah. I would start to talk and they would cut you off. And so I've used he's a great guy, a digital media person when I was working with the clients, and he was much better. I can do it on my own for my stuff, but when I had clients, I needed this guy, and he was terrific at it. But we would begin to talk and he would cut me off. And I finally said to him, you have got to let me finish a thought. You're not paying attention to what I'm saying. So you're getting the point. And his response was, I just get so excited about it. But you're right. It is. And that's a tough one to teach. You just need to stop every time and there's no other way around it.
Yeah, that's even they're hearing you, but they're not. I think the listening and hearing is two different skill set. Are you listening properly? And then if you are listening, then are you understanding properly?
You can be good at speaking, but I have found that if I'm doing some of these score presentations for these people that are in a business or wanting to start a business, and sometimes if I ask one of the participants to give their point of view, or if I make some comment, they start to talk, just keep talking. And I've got a room full of people and I have to have that person be a little bit quieter. I need to figure out a way to, diplomatically move on. So you're right. I don't think people, we all, I think, suffer from it. I need to, there are times I need to step back, but the awareness of it among young people is really hard.
I find a lot of business leaders I work with, Jim, the very top ones, they're very good listeners. I think one of the skill set them apart. They don't speak as much, but they're very good listeners. So they can dissect the information and present in such a way that people understand. So that, I find the top ones, the ones on the top of the game, very good listeners.
One of the things I like is every day Inc. magazine says, they send a thing with about 5 or 6 different little stories. And the beauty of them, you can get through them in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I can't tell you how right you are, because often they have somebody, espousing their point of view on things, and top leadership skills, listening is always there. You got to have communication skills, critical thinking, listening is up there. And that is one of the things that more and more executives are complaining about. So you hit it right on the head.
Very interesting. So, this communication and critical thinking is definitely, there's a shortage. It creates, but also the people who are listening, the business leaders or C-level people listening, it creates a lot of, it creates a gap for businesses. So a lot of burden for business leaders. If I'm going to hire, recruit people in a business, I'm trying to build a team. If there's such a gap, what are business leaders are doing to, fill the gap in? How do they training those people? What are you finding that, wherever the gap is, whether it's a critical thinking, whether it's a listening or communication, how do business leaders approaching that? Because they have to deliver customer service. They still have to train people for sales and marketing. So how do they train these people? How do they go about it?
I think the first thing they need to do is, beyond recognizing it, you can't just say, here's a book, read this and write well. I think you need to start and create a culture of communication. I think it has to be to the point where it should be in your HR manual, that one of the pillars of our and part of our DNA and part of our essence and the way we work is that we need a culture of communication. And on top of basically some of these things we've discussed in terms of being able to listen and be respectful and all those type of things, I think they should have the 10-step form from my books in that thing. Because if, think about it, if there's a one-page marketing brief, why do you think a brief was created in the first place? Because a senior executive's most precious resource is time. So you need to be able to have the team take all that information, analyze it, and bring it down with the plan and the solution, and get it down using keywords to be precise and key phrases to be concise, and get it down so that you can do it. You can get it down to one page. And Procter and Gamble, big everything. I used to know a lot of guys who worked at Procter. They were all about, and they created brand management and marketing. They were all about getting things to one page. And Jack Welch at General Electric, same thing, get it down to one page. So if you should create a culture of communication, this one page should be in the book, and says anytime you're about to go through a significant thing and a significant plan or a communication to somebody in the team or whatever, externally or internally, use this format, because it structures you to think. It's kind of a building blocks. When I learned how to play guitar, you learn with chords, and then you start learning how to do some pentatonic scales and all these things. You learn how to play lead. In sports, I'm not a great athlete, but I play golf, and you need to learn some of the fundamentals. We don't teach these fundamentals. We've somehow have skipped over from persuasive writing to graduation of college, and you're not learning these fundamental things to help you think clearly. And it can be done with a one page of 10 steps.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So you can build that into whether it's an HR manual, Jim. You can put those charts out. But as you know, communication and critical thinking, it's all about practice as well. You got to practice that all the time. Otherwise, you're gonna sharpen the skill.
Yes.
But instead of your staff going to practice on your customers, is there a way they can practice themselves in a team before they go out and trying to practice on a customers and a sales or in a marketing, whatever the department they work in? Should they be practicing themselves before they go out?
Well, yeah, I guess if I may, I will talk about my book for a moment. And my book. The first one is all about getting through that. And what I did with the students down at Angelo State is the professors had them read both books. And then I gave a presentation of 3 hours of giving them the background. I think the first thing you need to make them understand, and I think I actually, on my site, I actually have I think it's $34. You can download the PowerPoint and download the one-page form right away and hand out the books. And the beauty of the PowerPoint, it tells your team, here are some issues you don't realize that are out there in the world. So it's not pointing at them, it's just their fault. And I talk to the point of you need to try and get people to do it. But have them read the books, understand the problem, read the books, and then come back. And the beauty of the one-page form, I put on each next to the 10 steps, a little description of what goes in there. So they should, you're 100% right. They should be, getting some assignments and writing them. And frankly, you can do it in school too. Have the students in high school, okay, we want to go on a field trip. Have everybody write their strategic plan as to how they should go, and have to make them consider things. We just don't train this. So you're 100% right. It needs a format, and let's face it, if there's a format, everybody gets better at it together. And then, there should be some practice sessions. But I think once they start to do it, it's not that hard. It's not like I had to retrain everybody every time they got into and work with the agency. As you give them this approach, I would usually give somebody, here's, give me a briefing, a setup on what we want to do based upon this meeting here. And it would usually end up with several pages, convoluted paragraphs, wordy, and not structured well. Fill in these blanks, and it is a much easier process.
Yeah, and you can use it over and over. Every week or every month, whenever you want to do training on that, you can use it over and over. The same method.
Gurmeet, I have been using this since I was 24. And I'm 69. And that's part A. Part B is that Although I use it all the time, every week at some point, if I'm going to be writing something to somebody, I start with the most important thing is the purpose, the first one. Who are you talking to and what do you want them to do? It's
Uh,
just, people forget who they're talking to. And I can't tell you the amount of clients I've been with. And these are smart people, but they don't necessarily, to me, people say, oh, that's such a simple thing. Well, I've been going in and out of organizations because I've been on the agency side. I've gone into scores of companies, dealt with hundreds of executives. And I can tell you the use of this very simple tool is by far the exception versus the rule. And if they would use this approach, it would help them. And the senior person is usually very experienced and logical, but it doesn't mean that they're good at it. My clients would always, I shouldn't say always, but often would say, "Could you write this up for me?" Because it's a simple thing. So I still use it to this day.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, that skill set, it's every department needs to work on it, get better at it, Jim. It doesn't matter what department you work in. Communication is one of those pillars that, you can build anything on top of it, but the basic has to be there. And the marketing sales are the two critical departments for communication.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones who are supposed to be good at it. And I always love working with the sales force because, there was always this little marketing versus sales. But in the end, my job was to make sure that the message was being delivered properly, and their job was to bring it home, make sure it gets sold. But, I worked in a lot of clients that were SaaS companies, software as a service. And the senior people, the CEOs, they were pretty good at this. They were always pretty smart, but some of them were finance, and they were much more number oriented, and they could read a balance sheet and pick out a problem right away. But they weren't necessarily great at communicating their thinking. And frankly, some of the no offense to the technical folks in the world, that isn't necessarily their forte. Is the communication things. So I would have to work with them a lot. I found myself often, in meetings, watching the thing go on for 30 minutes and saying, okay, why don't I kind of get up to the board here and let's structure this? And I'd start with, okay, who are we trying to talk to? What's the background? What's the issues? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the objectives? Go through strategies, that kind of thing. So
yeah, we're IT professionals, including myself. We this is a skill set we need so much, that communication. And we don't like to work on it. This is something because it has a lot of structure. If a software developer would rather write a code than write a paragraph to get better at communication, right? So,
well, I think part of the problem, it's interesting you're talking about this, because early on when we were talking about the STEM courses, they talk about those being the hard skills versus the soft skills. And I have to tell you that I abhor the word soft skills, because what does soft connotate? Soft connotate easy, not that important, don't worry about it, it's okay, we'll be fine. The hard skills are hard. So I'm actually out there trying to say we need to call them dynamic skills, because dynamic means it's productive, it's effective, it's aggressive. I mean, and compelling. That's a much better word than soft skills. I hate soft skills because I think it demeans, and frankly, the folks that are really good at the hard skills, as we were just talking, they're often not good at the soft skills. And if we could think about a company that had all of mostly hard skill type folks, coders and things, and if you said you need to learn to do code, there's a process. I assume, I couldn't do code to save my life, but I assume that there's a sort of a disciplined, structured building block process to code. Well, all you need to do is say there's a structured, disciplined process to critical thinking and information, and here's your formula. It's 10 steps. Go about it that way. I've trained people. I know this works.
Oh, nice. So let's talk about your journey, Jim. How did you get so good at communication? Why pick communication and marketing? Well, how your journey's been? If you talk about a little bit of your journey.
I graduated from high school, and I was really good at math, at least algebra. It just came like that. And we have a thing down here called the Regents. We used to have them in New York State. You had to pass the Regents. I think I had a 98 or a 99 on it. So I decided, and my parents were pretty conservative, and my father was valedictorian at St. John's
Yeah.
University, and they didn't want me to go away to school. I was the oldest, and they were like, and all my friends were going away to school. And this was the '70s, man, and I'm like, I want to go away to school. And so I decided I got into Fairfield University in Connecticut as a math major. But there were parties going on every day, and I somehow forgot to go to class and forget to study. So I just barely stayed in college, and so at the very first day of second semester, I called my dad, who was a very smart guy, and I said, "So I guess I'm going to have to like switch out of math." He said, "I've been awaiting the call," and I said, "So, Dad, I guess I should go into business." He said, "Okay." And I said, so they give five majors here. There's management, which sounds just boring and terrible. And please don't make me be an accountant or a banker, because I didn't know anything about investment banking. That probably would have been a good path. But I was like, please don't. So there's two other words there. I have no idea what they mean. One is economics, and the other one is marketing. And he said, so economics is a lot of theory, it's a lot of numbers, so that would help you, but it's a lot of theory, and you write a lot of papers, and you don't really do things. You don't really get things done unless you're the senior person at a bank or the senior person in government doing that. I said, okay. I said, what's marketing? He goes, I think marketing, it suits you because it's dealing with people, it's creative. I've always been pretty creative, and it's getting things done and being energetic and, pushing things forward. And I'm like, I'm in marketing. So since the time I was 18 and a quarter, I was in marketing, and I really enjoyed it. He got me an internship. He introduced me to somebody in the neighborhood who worked at a research firm, and I did research during the Nixon investigations. I was cutting numbers out of a phone book, and then 20 pages cutting some more numbers, because that was random sampling. And I got out of college and got a job in the research company, and then got into a manufacturer. And the research director said, I'll let you get into brand management and marketing, but you got to give me 2 years. And I said, okay. And in 13 months, he stood in the doorway. He said, I need to talk to you. And I thought I was going to be fired. And he said, there's an opening in the marketing and the brand group, which is what I wanted to get into. And most people had to have an MBA, and I never got one. And he said, I can't let you miss this opportunity to work for Connie Humphrey. And so he let me go and be the brand person, get into brand management. And so I did that. And then I went down to Coke, and I worked at Coke. I was brand manager on Coke. Came back to New York. I kissed Park and 53rd and said, I will never leave New York again. I didn't hate Atlanta. New York's where it's at for me. And so I got in the wine spirit business, and I became a VP of marketing and sales in an importer, which was cool because I traveled to Europe 5 times a year. And then I switched over to Saatchi and became president of two small divisions there, a promotion division and a new interactive division that was more battery operated LED displays than what we think of as digital today. And then in 1990, the two of the guys who worked with me over there and I started an agency, and we each had a wall, and we had one broken IBM Selectatype. And
Wow.
when I retired, and we were in this tiny little space up on 48th Street. And when I retired, let me see, we had 36 people on Park Avenue and 30th Street, and we had 4 clients over 17 years. And the agency business and it was a lot of agencies. It was all about creating great work so they win awards and get a lot of notoriety and win more clients. Our focus, we all came from client side brand managers. And so, one, we didn't know how to do that as well. But two, we wanted to get clients and grow with them. So we would keep clients along. The average tenure of an ad agency is like 3 or 4 years. And we had 4 clients over 17 years when I retired.
Wow.
And so our focus was on building their business. So we became an integral part of their team. And I 10 times was an outsourced CMO. And so I really enjoyed that part, because I would go work with smaller companies that do not have a marketing person, and it would be I don't know how big your company is, but it would be a company that needed to get out in the marketplace, but they didn't need a full-time CEO, a CMO, and then all the marketing staff and all the creative. So we would sort of function in that capacity, and I loved it. I would work directly with the teams, and we helped grow some businesses, which I'm very proud of. And my focus
Okay.
has always been branding. I start, and that's one of the presentations I give during SCORE. I start with, what is your business? What is your category? Make sure you do a deep dive, understand the marketplace, understand competitive strengths and weaknesses, lots of SWOT analysis, and then you refine it to get to what should be your brand position and your marketing strategy and all that. So that's the part that I was trained on, and it's my favorite part.
Very interesting. Wow, so many years of experience that Jim, so much wisdom that definitely said.
Would you please tell my children that?
Well, it's you walk the walk, right? So you work with a lot of companies. It's years of experience that definitely newcomers need to learn from. Somebody like there's so much to learn from you. Well, where can people find your books, Jim? Both of them, if they want to get a copy of your books.
It's very simple. Is Get Your Ducks in a Row with an E. GetYourDucksInARow.com. You can either buy them individually from that site by going to Amazon, or if you want to buy bulk copies, once you get to 10, I can do bulk copies and get you discounts based upon how many you buy. And then I'm also a keynote speaker, so there's 3 or 4 pages in the website, and I'd be glad to talk to anybody. When you're talking about teaching, I loved being able to talk to those students and going back and forth with them, and that's why I enjoy the SCORE thing, is talking with people and trying to help them understand marketing.
Well, I'm going to include a link below this video to your books as well, and also to your website as well, and a LinkedIn page as well, so people can easily connect with you. Great. There's so much to learn from you. I enjoy our discussion, and want to acknowledge your time you spent with me. It was a great discussion. I learned so much. And business leaders who are watching, or CEOs who are watching, I'll definitely encourage these people to, there's going to be a link below the video. Connect the link, click on the link, reach out to you, connect with you, and have a discussion with you. Who knows where the discussion can take you, right? But there's so much to learn. So, reach out to you, get a copy of your book, and connect with you, and have a quick discussion, see where that goes.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Gurmeet.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Jim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.